Don't let me stray. Please guide my way onto the path of my deen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah, I'm calling your name. Oh, Allah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers, to another live episode of Let's Talk. I'm your host, Yusuf Karma, on your favorite station, Huda TV. And today we're talking about the very, very crucial topic of, can men and women be friends? This is very interesting because there are many studies that show different evidences that we will get into. But before further ado, we would like to introduce our noble guest all the way from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We have a Dr. Sheikh Al-Mu'allim, Brother Hamid Sharif. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. How are you, Brother Hamid?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing good.
MashaAllah. Could you please tell us about yourself?
My name is Hamid Sharif. I'm from the city of Philadelphia. I've been living in Muslim countries from my adolescent years, studying Quran, Arabic, and other Islamic sciences. And right now I'm planning to further my studies in the Azhar University.
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, inshallah. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, brother.
The honor is ours, inshallah.
Inshallah. Also, we have Brother Mahmoud Naguib, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Peace be upon you. My name is Mahmoud Naguib. I'm an English instructor and translator and soft skills trainer. I've been teaching English for more than 8 years, including different courses. And actually it gives me great pleasure and confidence to be here surrounded by a company of righteous people, exchanging insights and knowledge. And thank you for hosting us.
Alhamdulillah, the pleasure is always ours, Brother
Thank
Mahmoud. We also have the very intelligent and honorable, studious Brother Patrick. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Patrick. I'm from Slovenia. I came to Egypt mainly because of Islam. I wanted to know more about Islam, and also because of education. I'm a student in MSA University.
Okay, and what are you studying in MSA University?
I'm studying management sciences currently, yes.
So very quickly, tell me about Slovenia. Are there a lot of Muslims there? Like, what's the
We have our
situation?
small community, yes,
Okay.
but you have to differentiate between modern Muslims and the real Muslims. We don't have the Muslims that are like, living correctly and but also like interact with the community. Either you have the really closed part, which they don't interact with the community, but they're living religiously and they take care of their deen. And then you have the modern Muslims who want to build a mosque by making a concert of metal music.
That's a whole different topic within itself, right? Last but certainly not least, we have the veteran of the show, our sheikh on the show, our advisor, Brother Idris Tawfiq. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Tell us about yourself, Brother Idris.
Originally from the States, from Maryland, but I lived all over the country. And I moved here, got married, and I'm studying Arabic when I can, and memorizing Quran, and at the same time also teaching English. So just trying to benefit and gather the best I can from while I'm here, inshallah.
Okay. So let's get right into the topic, gentlemen, as we are short for time on the show. What are we talking about when we say friendship between men and women? What does that look like? Is there such a thing when we say friendship between men and women? Since the topic is, can men and women be friends? Brother Hamid.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Frankly speaking, upon looking at this question, I mean, I couldn't really come up with a legitimate, idea of how that would look from the Islamic perspective. So I don't even have.
Or just socially, we have social examples,
Socially, how it would look would be, for example, if you had a male student in a school or university, and he has female, colleagues or classmates, and there's these people, he run into them like at least 5 days of the week, so he's almost compelled to interact with them.
Sure,
So the way the friendship would look would be, daily greetings, good morning, small talk, how are you, and stuff like that. And the professor might, assign them to a group projects, and you're compelled to interact and work with them. So in that regard, the friendship would just consist of, you know, what's necessary to get the goal accomplished. You know, that's the only thing.
Okay, so it's sort of functional friendship based upon the needs.
Exactly.
Which is where it starts, right? Okay, Brother Mahfoud.
In the name of Allah, I just want to stress on point. Nowadays, lots of young men, they have the problem of, you know, this brainwashed young men. They think that it's okay to have a best friend now of the opposite sex, so it's okay to hang out, to fool around with a young man. It's okay, there's no problem. And actually, this is a problem. Our Islam, you know, warns us against this problem. As I remember, there is an ayah in our Holy Quran. It says that Allah has, I can't remember actually this one ayah, but it says that it's forbidden for this kind of mixture between a man and a woman. And actually nowadays, I see that nowadays in many universities, you know, the increase of common law marriage and lots of problems because of this mixture, friendship. And actually, I don't think this is legal or this is illegitimate. This is legitimate in our Islam, since we have this problem. You know, mixture between man and woman can cause lots of problems for many reasons. What can I say also? In our Islam, our Prophet Muhammad, I remember a situation for someone is called Al-Fadl. He was with our Prophet Muhammad, and our Prophet Muhammad, you know, this man was looking to a woman, and she looked at him, and even our Prophet Muhammad, you know, turned his face to the other side, telling him that, you know, you should lower your gaze. Even lowering your gaze, this is the first, you know, first step to prevent yourself from getting into sins, falling into sins, because, you know, this mixture can cause lots of problems, and this is true. If you look at universities nowadays, there is an increase. There is a big increase. It's noticeable in this secret marriage, and this is quite sure. This is really, I can see that, you know, nowadays, and also, and if you look at Western societies, you see the concept, the so-called best friend or even boyfriend or girlfriend doesn't exist in our religion, because we don't have this. Our religion seek to purify the man from a woman, and this really shatters the concept of being committed to one person. You see, a lady has lots of boyfriends and girlfriends, so you feel like she's losing some of her reputation. You know, I don't know. This is a problem in our country nowadays. They have this brainwashed idea of thinking like it's okay to have a boyfriend, it's okay to have a girlfriend, to fool around, to hang out, and this is not true, I think.
It's something funny where I remember being in class and the teacher told me to give an example. This is Arabic class. And he said, you know, give an example using the feminine form of this verb or whatever. So I said something to the effect of Fatima, Tashrab, Shay, something like this, right? Then everyone was like, who's Fatima? And I was like, oh, Sadiqati. And they're like, oh, scandalous, right? So the question I want to switch to you guys, is it a such thing as a platonic relationship where, you know, I have this woman friend, or if I'm a woman, I have this guy friend, and we're just friends. It's nothing more than a friendship. Is there such thing as a platonic relationship?
I would just like to add that he said that you have to lower your gaze, and this is actually, yes, this is true. Because what is the meaning of friendship is, in Islam, women and men can come together only when it comes to tasks. When it comes to tasks, which are sociable tasks which you cannot avoid. As he mentioned, in college, in a workplace, in anywhere that you're forced to deal with women, you have to deal professionally. There has to be nothing sexual. Of course, it happens because this is a psychological thing. It happens. If a man looks at a woman and nothing happens, then something's wrong with him. Because it's a psychological need. It's a hierarchy of needs. You need respiration, then you have food. You have the actual sexual desire, which evolves when you're growing. So this is a problem. So Allah mentions this in Surah An-Nur, chapter number 24, verse number 30. He says, say to the believing man to lower his gaze. In order to what? When he looks on one woman, to lower his gaze, to maintain modesty. In order not to think of bad things, because shaitan works in mysterious ways, and he keeps telling you bad things, you know, that's and that, and maybe, you know, plays with your head. Going to the platonic, I mentioned platonic relationship. The platonic relationship means that there is only, you know, intimacy and closeness, but there is no sexuality involved. I think that in mahrams, that is not possible, because with time you become closer. with let's say someone that's not the mahram, you become closer. You gain a new level of trust. You gain a new level of something, new level. If you start this, it will evolve into something more. You will want more because humans, our natures, we always want more. So in the back of our mind is gonna be that she is available. She's non-mahram. She's not my sister. She's not my mom. It's gonna be in the back of your head. So it may open the door sooner or later. So platonic relationship only exists when you can mention, let's say, some kind of platonic relationship between a mother and a son. She's close to him. She's intimate. She will kill herself before something happens to her son. Even it goes to that level. But it's not sexual. But with non-mahrams, I don't think that's possible. I think when you reach a certain level, that door will be opened. If not even to shaitan, yani even from your own self, like your own psychology will act on you, and it will be more and more difficult to lower your gaze.
Brother Idris?
Okay, I'm just going to echo a lot of things he said in a certain way. I'm just going to say it flat out. First of all, we need to take our Western cap off, our Western lens of seeing through and of seeing things and our experiences, especially us coming from the West. Sometimes we don't see things through a Sharia lens. Okay, first of all, when Islam doesn't deal with this friendship thing. Why? Because it deals with mahrams. Okay, either she's your mahram or she's not. Allah doesn't ask you, oh, there's an exception because she's your friend. No. We don't deal with friendship in this way. Friendship is between a man and a man and a woman and a woman. Okay? Allah talks about this friendship. But when it talks about the opposite sex, He doesn't talk about friendships. He talks about mahram. So we have to take this Western way of thinking about friendships and trying to make it in a definition that fits in that society, which is haram.
Okay.
You know, it is what it is. And what's the definition of a friend? I looked it up today because I was like, and I was thinking, what do I really say about that? I mean, it is clearly what it is, you know. But the definition of a friend is a person whom one knows and with whom one has a bond of mutual affection. Can you have this with a woman? And no, this is haram. So that doesn't mean, I'm not trying to sound like some people will take this out of context and say, oh, look at this Wahhabi, look, he's extreme. And that's not even what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that our relationship with the opposite sex needs to be in boundaries.
Okay.
Okay, and this boundary doesn't involve being considered a friend.
Okay.
So we have to look at it from, okay, if she's not mahram, what does Allah tell you how to treat non-mahram? It doesn't matter whether she's friend or not.
Some people say I have good intentions. My intentions are pure. So
but it has nothing to do with that. It has to do what does Allah, the one who created you and us, tell us how to treat non-mahram. What is our behavior towards them? I don't care about this friendship thing. So.
Okay, so we understand Sharia, right? The maqasid of the Sharia is not for the exception, as Brother Idris said, the exception is for the normative situation. So under normal circumstances, when men and women get together of the opposite sex, of course, as some heterosexual,
them, yes.
Not only that, but the elements that are there in a friendship, if this person is attractive, if they're intelligent, if they relate to you in the same manner that makes you want to stay with them,
if they're
right?
your friend.
Exactly, they're friends, right? So under normal situations, this could cause affection, which would lead to other steps, right? So that's the maqasid of Sharia for the normative situations. Now, if you're a kind of individual where you can sit with the opposite sex, if someone is attracted to you, they're intelligent, they have all these attractive qualities, and you feel nothing, then you're the abnormal situation. It's abnormal,
and
right?
it
It's not
still
the
doesn't
normative.
give you the license to do it.
Right, so it's the maqasid of the Sharia, it covers that which is the normative situation.
And I just want to add something, because there's this group of people today that love, and some of my shaykh from before warned me against this type of thing, is that we don't use maqasid to make fatwa. All right? Maqasid is something that you have observed from the Sharia being used, the fatwas being applied, and you've seen the benefits of it, and you've picked them up and say, it seems like after all these things have been applied, that Islam takes life seriously. So this is maqasid of life, okay? But you don't start with maqasid to make a fatwa.
No.
Some people are doing this today.
Especially when it's coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Some people are using the maqasid to give a fatwa, not using the fatwa, not Quran, not using hadith, not using the usul. They're just giving maqasid as if they're mujtahid mutlaqs, and they're giving maqasid fatwas.
No, I think maqasid I mean, this is another conversation.
Not you, but I'm talking about some people in the audience.
Yeah, the maqasid is something that's important as well, just in general, but it's not something that by itself, on its own, that you create.
Use for fatwa is what I'm
Right,
trying to
fatwas.
say. Don't use it for
justify their
fatwas.
deeds.
Right,
yeah.
right.
I didn't know I was in a fiqh class.
Yeah, we took it in the fiqh class. But let's get back to, so like I was saying that the Sharia is one thing, right? But even if you just look socially, right? If you apply the Sharia to a certain situation, there's always benefit. There's always a wisdom to it.
Yeah.
So what is the wisdom? If you just look at it from the lens of socially, what are some social ramifications of just the free intermixing of men and women? If we just look at our own Western society.
The ramifications and the consequences is that, you know, the hadith comes to mind where the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا لَمْ تَسْتَحِي فَاسْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. So if you're not shy, if you don't have modesty, then you're gonna do whatever you want. So when people freely mix and this friendship is, you know, you have friendship with the opposite sex, that level of haya and modesty, it diminishes. And once it diminishes, you know, shaitan starts to make other things so easy, and, you know, he makes it normal for you. So it first starts off by you seeing a girl, boom, 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 then greetings, then you talk to her, then you may think that giving a handshake is okay. Then after the handshake, you say, oh, just give her a hug. Then when you say, oh, I didn't see her in a long time, give her a hug. And then it just keeps going, And the one Arab poet, he summarized the whole process of what transpires between a man and women. He said that نظرة فابتسامة فسلام فكلام فموعد فلقاء. It starts off by a single look.
Isn't it Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah?
Maybe it is.
Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah
No.
said this. The idea of how a scent develops through time.
Yes.
So he said it starts off by a look, then followed by greeting, then a look, then a smile, then greeting. Then after the greeting is followed by talk and conversation, and throughout that conversation, y'all make a meeting, and then after the meeting, the actual act happens. So that's why, and he alluded to the verse in Surah An-Nur where Allah says, قُلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِم, like, lower your gaze, stop that first look, because after you see that, you become, curious, you want to know what's after that, then you keep going. So we just have to cut that first door. But once you allow that to happen, this is what we face in the West, people, boyfriend, girlfriend, kids out of wedlock, etc. That's the consequence.
This is exactly what I agree on, because this is exactly what happens. Stars over and smile. And actually, they said that most scholars said that to some point it's gonna happen. But if you believe, if you lower your gaze and you keep your deen and you have a strong consciousness of God, have a strong taqwa, you may look the first time, you may smile, and that's it. Like, keep that in mind. Even if you do that, if your consciousness of Allah is strong, you will stop. This is exactly what happens. He mentioned.
Yeah. I just want to add one thing, is that if you look at Islam and all of the things that Allah tells us to not do, He usually doesn't tell you not to do something. He usually tells you not to go near it. He usually gives you warnings of things that, like, He doesn't say don't do zina. He tells you don't go near it. So this gives you an idea. He's cutting off the avenues, the ways towards these things. Yeah. He's not telling you, okay, get close to it and smell it and sniff it and say, wow, this cake smells good. Don't eat the cake. He tells you, don't go in the kitchen.
Allah wouldn't ask us to do something. Yeah, this is true. Allah wouldn't ask us to do something or warn us against something unless this is something really harmful or impossible. Allah is merciful. So Allah cares about us. So if there is something harmful for us, Allah wouldn't ask us for doing this. So this is true.
And it's not a lot of things that He has to be made haram. It's not like most things are halal. Some people think, oh, haram, 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 haram. There's only a small bit of things that are haram.
Yes.
So look at all of the halal you have and stop worrying about the haram.
And not even that is like, it would be extreme if He just said, don't commit zina or don't eat pork, but there's always an alternative. So don't approach zina, but you can get married. So then you have like the youth, they always say like, oh, I'm too young to get married. But the same thing you're doing at the age 18, 19, you can do it in a halal way with a wife.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Halalify the relationship.
Our
Yes,
Prophet
yes,
Muhammad
actually, I'm
also
not happy
is.
though, because this is another problem in today's days, that marriage is not like it was in the times of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It's a lot more difficult. Need money, need gold, need a car.
You don't need those stuff.
That's the pressure that
If
society to society. That's the pressure they
If
put.
two
And
people love each other, so marry them.
So, exactly.
It helped them.
This is yeah. They help them. Even if he only has a shield, only has a sword, only has a, I don't know what he used that. They marry them.
Or else what? What's the?
إلا تفعلوا تكون فتنة في الأرض وفساد.
Yes.
Yeah, our Prophet Muhammad has said that also, by the way. Our Prophet Muhammad recommended the solution for this problem. He said, if you can afford getting married, you can marry. If you can't, then fast. Fast gives you this power of
Real fasting, brother.
Yeah, of course, to restrain yourself from these desires.
Yeah, actually, I have the point of this. As I mentioned earlier, the hierarchy of needs.
Okay.
It's respiration. We need to breathe.
Yep.
Then it's food. Then it's the sexual desire. By fasting, because Allah knows how the human body works. By fasting, there's a higher desire. You become hungry. So the body neglects the sexual desire because
Diminish.
there's a newer problem. Your brain notices. Oh, okay, so he doesn't eat. So you get hungry.
And
So fasting.
we need to distinct between people that understand. When you say fasting, it doesn't just mean food and drink
Exactly.
only. It means
the
also
thoughts.
abstaining from bad behavior. Really fasting,
Yes,
you know, abstaining
gossiping,
yourself.
sexual desires.
I know people who fast and say it doesn't work for me because all they're doing is leaving food and water. They're not doing real fasting and not really attempting to try to fast.
Yeah.
So let's try to set, because we don't live in this vacuum, right? So these are real world experiences, especially us who come from the West. It's nearly impossible to exist without having interactions with women on an everyday basis. This a normative thing. Here, it may be separation. Not even here, really. You get on microbuses, and you know, whatever the case may be. But in real world experiences, what are the parameters that we have to set for ourselves? Not that we live in a vacuum, but how do we? Okay, I see someone. They need directions or something like that, or just general conversation, cordialness or whatever, and just keep it simple. How do I, exist or whatever, carrying myself as a good, respectable Muslim man without being extreme?
I got a story.
Or a Muslim woman as well.
You actually mentioned the answer in your question. Like,
Yeah, but how? What does that look like, though?
Keep it simple. You mentioned it. It's right there. Keep it simple. If you complicate things, then obviously things are going to get complicated. So when things get complicated, it's like exactly going to a first grade. When you go to a first grade, you're going to be taught 1 + 1 = 2. When you go to second grade, are you going to take 1 + 1 = 2? No, you're going to take something harder.
Right.
And when you go to sixth, they're going to take something harder. Exactly how Allah mentions, do not go near zina. Because, as you mentioned, it starts with a smile.
Right.
It will develop. Exactly the same. You don't go to every grade taking the same things. It develops. It will go to smile. You just start saying hi. You start shaking hands. You think hugs are okay. And then it's like, maybe I can meet her.
You know what's like scary about that? Like when the more you try to like live your life steadfast like that, the more attention and attraction you get from the opposite sex, because they're so used to guys maybe coming to them or wanting to get to know them, and then you don't do that. They're just curious, and it draws more attention to you, so it makes your task more difficult.
Yeah, concerning this point, I got a story to say about a friend, someone, this kind of social media. There's a guy, he's married, and his wife also. They have lots of friends on Facebook. Her husband, is away, out of town, so she started to text somebody, then she started to call each other, then they date each other, and then they made zina, and then they got divorced. There is the problem here. The rate of divorce nowadays is getting higher and higher. Why? Because of this problem, I see this mixture, and also, this happens also in universities. The common law marriage in universities, the secret, they call it secret marriage. Nowadays, you see lots of couples, still students, and they are married. In secret, of course, and also other things. If you look at Western societies, you see this so-called boyfriend and girlfriend, you see a lady indulges in so many sexual intercourses before she got married. She doesn't have the concept of committing to one person. She's surrounded by a group of people, group of young men, group of boyfriends. Is it true? We don't have this in our Islam. The lady, I remember a story also, a friend, someone told me, someone who used to live in England, he's a Muslim, and he was talking to an English guy. So the English guy asked him, why do Muslim ladies don't shake hands? He said simply, can you shake the hand of the queen? He said, no. He said, all Muslims are queens. I like it. I like this one.
I just have one point because I don't know how long much time I have.
Hamid, then Idris.
No, for
Okay, but the point I wanted to make was that we have this idea that during the Rasulullah's time that, it was like a total separation of sexes. And this isn't reality.
True.
This is something that I don't know where people get it from. Even sometimes some of the interaction today is more than they had. For instance, the story about when the Sahaba used to go to the masjid, and there was a beautiful woman who used to come to the masjid in the line, and some of the guys, the Sahaba were weak. They would go to the back line, which which isn't good for a man. He tries to go to the front. They would go to the back. So when they made ruku, they could see her. And Allah revealed an ayah about them, telling that we know those who go to the back, we know that they would go to the front to avoid seeing her, because she was so beautiful.
Yeah.
So, like for instance, when they went to the masjid, they wouldn't be able to see her if there was a curtain. There wasn't a curtain. They were still walking amongst each other. There wasn't like, oh my God, there's a woman, and they had this. There were interactions. There were social interactions in the public. They didn't avoid each other like that. It wasn't an issue really. I mean, of course, you wouldn't be seen alone walking down in the alley with a woman, but they still had interactions that we can learn from them. Interactions today. The problem is that a lot of Muslims today don't know that these things were happening. They think it was some utopia where everyone was totally separate. This side of the city women, this side of the city the men, and nobody talked to each other.
That's really true. For the Hamid, then we're going to go for a short break.
Okay, I just wanted to comment on something he said. Like, another consequence of this whole friendship thing is like, so you have in societies where girls may have boyfriends throughout high school and stuff like that, and they get emotionally attached to this specific person or 2-3 people. So then when it comes time for them to get married, they compare to what they used to know. You know what I mean? And that causes divorce and stuff like that, because you're comparing to things that, whereas if you, practice chastity throughout your life to the best of your ability, nobody's perfect, and that's the beauty about, marrying a virgin, because that bond will be there forever. Like, you're going to be the only person that she really knows.
Likewise.
And vice versa,
Okay, so we're going to go for a short break. We'll be right back to continue this very crucial conversation on the topic of can men and women be friends. I'm your host, Yusuf Karma. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How perfect my Allah is, and I praise Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, Subhanallahi wa how perfect you are, Allah, Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Dear viewers, as the title suggests, our discussion on this series is talking about ideas, or isms and schisms, or let's be more precise, ideologies.
The importance of studying ideologies comes from the fact that ideologies are ideas that control how society looks at the world.
France is a liberal, secular state, and these women who are wearing the burkini are showing their religion outwardly.
Islam has established a scientific community. It has not stifled science. It has nothing to do with science. The major name that comes up with civil rights movement is Martin Luther King. But there was another unacknowledged contribution from Malcolm X, who defended black rights. When he converted to Islam, he started to disregard.
When we look at slavery inside of Islam, we find many times that a person was a slave when he entered into Islam, but then later on he ended up becoming like a leader of an army or the leader of a particular country or a place. So does Islam allow for slaves to take positions of power?
Yeah, slaves have a greater chance of being integrated in society.
Joining us on this fantastic new series, The Pool of Ideas, where we're taking a number of ideologies from across the world, from throughout history, and we're trying to give them some comprehensive understanding, as well as shedding some Islamic light on them as well.
If you're looking for a book to read that's going to give you what you need,
ورتل القرآن ترتيلا ورتل القرآن ترتيلا.
Read and recite Quran as you should read it and recite it. Join me, my dear viewers, for this beautiful program of Quran for kids. In this program, we will get the chance to read some sections of the Quran and get a little bit of tafsir and interpretation of that section, and we will get the chance to ask questions and learn lessons. All of that in Quran for kids. Please join me.
When you put it in your heart, I think you're gonna say, I love Quran. First you gotta read it, then you understand it, then you wanna say, I love Quran. When you understand it.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers, to another live episode of Let's Talk. I'm your host, Yusuf Kroma, and today we're discussing, can men and women be friends? Is there such thing as a platonic relationship? What are the social ramifications of men and women being friends? Is it something that is, although it's common, is it something that is positive? Is it a negative? We discussed much thus far. Now we are sort of approaching it from a Shari'i perspective. What light can we shed on this topic from the Quran and the prophetic tradition, beginning with our brother Hamid?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we, in the first segment, we discussed that, how impossible it is for like in a friendship to exist between, both sexes. And it's subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He understands that how life works, and there will be situations where you will be, compelled to actually deal with the opposite sex. And we find in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ahzab, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set certain guidelines. When it came to the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions, He said, commanding the companions to, whenever they have a question or something to ask the wives of the Prophet, to ask them, وَإِذَا سَأَلْتُمُهُنَّ مَتَاعًا فَاسْأَلُوهُنَّ مِنْ وَرَاءِ حِجَابٍ. If, because the wives of the Prophet, they were scholars. They got the knowledge, fresh from the Prophet. So during his lifetime and after his death, people would go to Aisha and other wives of the Prophet, asking them questions about the religion. And the condition and the guideline Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set was that of being a barrier set between the women and the men. Be it a literal hijab or a hijab in clothing. And He also set a condition for the wives of the Prophet. He said, وَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ فَيَطْمَعَ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَضٍ. And don't speak with the feminine voice. Speak sternly, least or less that a desire or something may, hit the heart of the companion. Just so any evil thought wouldn't go to his mind or his heart. And if you look at it, it's like, the wives of the Prophet, these are the purest women ever. But yet, in the companions, they are the best people after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But yet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was strict in this regard, and He set down these guidelines because, at the end of the day, they're not exempted. They're human beings. So it's a possibility that shaitan can lead people in that. So Allah was strict in that regard. He said, when the men ask you questions, let it be behind the barrier, and you, when you respond, speak sternly, concise, get right to the point, leaving no room for anything else. And that's what I can say. That's what I feel like, the Quran shed light on that matter.
I mean, we even have a joke. There's a imam in Philly, he was giving a lecture and was talking about how sisters, sometimes they will flirt through their responses to them, right? A brother would say, for example, Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam. Elongate it, all right? Like that. So it's just like an example like that you were mentioning, whatever. It's just ways of communication where you could, lead to the sort of thing. Brother Mahmoud.
Actually, I need to realize something. Just because we are Muslims doesn't mean that we are immune to sins, committing it to sins or something like that.
Like the opposite, actually.
Of course. I want to say something about that part. Just because you see a lady is wearing a headscarf and loose-fitting clothes and a guy with a long beard and he prays regularly doesn't mean they can be friends. And this is really something which is warned in our Islam. Allah even has said that, didn't I charge you, children of Adam, that you shouldn't serve the shaitan he's an open enemy. So this is clear, obvious, clear in the Holy Quran. And also, I wanna
1 second, Mahmoud. The time is running out, so I'm instructed to move to another.
Okay,
guest.
sure.
So, Brother Patrick.
Yeah, I think it's here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions that in Surah An-Nisa, he said that he created both sexes, female and male, and he mentions that although they not to forget the duty that it was upon you, not to forget to lower your gaze. And furthermore, I think that what's really important is to always keep the consciousness of Allah in the back of your head. If you have high taqwa and you have high consciousness of Allah, you will have high consciousness of His of the guides that He provided you. Then you will not go near committing zina. If you don't struggle, if you don't think of Quran as a guide, and you don't really read it or you don't really follow it, then you will struggle into keeping yourself on the right path.
Okay. Brother Idris?
Just very quickly, because I know we're ending it, I would just say, just to be practical for people, because we're asking for practical advice and sort of, just be honest with yourself. Keep things quick, simple. I'm not saying you're not going to have interactions with the opposite sex. This is not going to happen in this day and age. So keep it simple, quick, concise, as the brother said, the Quran tells you. Just get to the point. And whenever everyone's honest with yourself, be honest with yourself. And evaluate yourself after the day. Do this normally. Evaluate yourself. Did I do something or say something that I probably shouldn't have said today? Just be honest with yourself. We're not going to sit here and say, no, you're not going to interact with women. Of course, it's going to happen. This is how life is now. But keep it simple, quick, and to the point, and
So I want to close this sort of discussion and leave this on the table. There was a study that brought 88 students on college campuses, girls and boys that were friends, right? And they asked them together, about their relationship and friendship. And then they separated them and started asking them questions. So they asked the woman, do you find this man attractive? And for the most part, the vast majority of them said no. If there was an opportunity for you to open up a relationship, would you pursue it? Vast majority of them said no. Do you think that they find you attractive or would like to engage in a relationship with you? And he said no. So when they asked the guys, 99.something% of them said, yeah, I find her attractive. Yes, if I had the opportunity to, I would like to engage in a relationship. Yes, I think she finds me attractive. Right? So it goes to show that your intention may be one thing, right? Especially for women, right? This, your intention may be one thing, and it shows that one of the scholars' example of the men being forward in salah, and in terms of women being in the back. And even with that example, you still had men that would look between their legs, come to salah just to look at the woman in the back, which is very ajib. But that's men, right, for you. So even your intention may be one thing, but you can't count on the intentions of other people. You don't know what their intentionality is. Certain times, you may purely, I'm not attracted to this person, they're just cool. But in their mind, they're just waiting for one opportunity. You wouldn't know unless you ask them, what do you think about pursuing a relationship, right? Yes, I've been waiting for this opportunity. So that study goes to show, for example, that the difficulty of understanding the psychology of men and women, which is in the men process food, drink, and intimacy in one part of the brain. Everything is like a synaptic snap between food, drinking, exercise, and intercourse. And women, they process that in a totally different part of the brain where they process emotional and other things like that. So you have two different people thinking on two complete different waves. And if you say, oh yeah, we could just be friends like that, there's going to be an imbalance in that situation there. So if you guys have any insight to share on that before we close the show.
Yeah, I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Imran, when Maryam, when she vowed her child to Allah, and then after she gave birth, she said, and I gave birth to a female, and Allah said, Wallahu a'lamu bima wada' wa laysa dhakaru kal untha. Man is not like a woman. So the psychology of the man is completely different. The emotions of a man is different. The personality type is different. Men, they like certain things in life. Women, they like makeup and this thing. So it's just two completely different people just come in and mix, and it's always going to be some sort of contradiction. And the most important, the psychology of the men are just men. And that's why, we just have to ask Allah for protection, and ask Allah to, protect us.
Brother Mahmoud?
I want to give some advice for for couples or for young people. Try to guard your chastity. Have a company of righteous people, so to avoid you from this kind of lowering your gaze. And of course, read a book, you know, when you are on the subway or something like that, because this will make you feel like you stray from that side. And of course, remember Allah always is God, and read the Holy Quran and be closer to Allah. Thanks.
Okay, Brother Patrick.
Yeah, I think that you know, most important is, as I mentioned earlier, always have limits. Always have that barrier. Do not engage in something that you're not sure you can you know, lower your gaze. If you're not sure, then don't engage. You know, I know that it's true. It's hard to these days. It's like Brother Idris said. It's impossible not to interact with women. And in fact, I go to college like every day. I interact with women or with girls mostly every day. Even my teaching assistants, they're all girls. So, but what the difference is that I know what I'm doing, and it's kept professional. It's kept with barriers and with certain things. So automatically, my head, it makes a system. There's a limit. So this is, you know, thoughts don't enter my head because you know I pushed myself to this limit. I don't think about this. But some men, they may struggle. They may seem, you know, because like you said, they think in a totally different way. They may think something, and the other opposite sex may think something. So you have to keep your balance. You have to keep your barrier. You have to keep your head straight, and you have to keep like I said, like if you pray, if you ask Allah to help you in this, Allah will help you in this.
I would say look for examples during the seerah or of the prophets, like when, for some reason, annoyed me to forget that the prophet was the one who went, was it Musa, who went out of town, and he left the city, and he was in need of help, and he asked Allah, I'm in need of help, and the two ladies came to him. So, and how did he interact with them? They were strangers. So look for examples like this in your life, and try to emulate how they treated strange women who didn't even know them, or women you do know, you know. So it doesn't mean you won't slip because you see them all the time that you might say something you probably shouldn't have said. It doesn't mean you're immune to it. We're not trying to sound like we're all saints and we don't all make slips and do something wrong. The point is that you know check yourself and say, whoa, wait a minute. I think I probably need to take a step back and correct myself and think about what I just said, and you know, correct yourself. So I don't want people to go home thinking that, you know, we're like trying to tell them to be saints. That's not reality. But the point is that you always try to hold yourself accountable. You will make slip-ups. You will have these things, especially in this day and world. But try to look at these examples of Rasulullah. Look at the Sahaba. Look at the companions. Look at the prophets. How they interacted with women. How do they interact? Find it. A lot of times you won't find the scholars talking about this a lot. So if your local imam or scholar isn't talking about it, go seek it. The material is there. Find these examples for you and try to, you know, use them as an example for yourself.
Yeah, I'm thinking about two stories, and I can't, for some reason, like I can't really pull them. The story of Musa alayhi salam, when he met the daughters. Does anybody remember?
That's what he alluded to.
Yeah.
That's the same story, but I was giving a short version.
Yeah, there was some.
It's a long story.
It was like briefly, it was a group of men hauling water from the well, you know, and their father was an old man, so he wasn't able to go and do the same thing. So he was sending his two daughters. So the two daughters, they would have to wait until everybody was finished taking their water, and then they would have to take their water. So Musa, traveling through the city, he witnessed this, and he's like, out of courtesy, he said, okay, let me help the two sisters. And then he poured out the water for them, and then they took the water to their dad, and then they came back to Musa and said, oh, my dad, he's asking for you. He wants to reward you for what you did for us. So when they were going back to the dad, initially the girl, because Musa doesn't know where they're going, initially the girl was walking ahead, her and her sister, but Musa said, no, let me walk ahead and y'all walk behind, and throw a rock in front or to the right, to the left, to guide me in which direction. And Musa, you know, he never looked back at them, nothing. And when they reached to the father, the girl said to her father, oh, my father, give him a job. Inna khayra man ista'jarta al-qawiy al-amin. The best person that could be qualified for this job is the strong person and the trustworthy. He said, how do you know he's strong? How do you know he's trustworthy? He said, oh, because when we were at the well, there was a rock there, and it took a lot of men who could lift it up, but they couldn't. But Musa came and he picked it up, and then he said, and she related the story when they were walking back here. Instead of us walking in front of him, no, he commanded us to walk behind and let him walk in front. So that was the one story, and
kind
that's
of
something we can
stories,
learn from
that we need to like look at for behaviors on how to deal with people non-mahram. We have examples, we just have to look and find them.
Yeah, subhanAllah. Out of that, his character or whatever, this, you know, this, mashallah, this of ihtiram, like, you know, preserving the religion, is modesty, because I believe many times society places modesty on women. Oh, women need to be modest, but men are just lewd and crude beings, right? But quite the opposite, men should have a certain amount of modesty as well, and respect just for women in general. So another story was about the monk who was given a brother's sister to mind while they were traveling away. I forgot his name. Are you familiar with this?
I forget the name too.
Yeah.
But subhanAllah, even another example comes to mind when the whole accusation of our mother Aisha came, when she was left behind, and then she was with that companion, and he took her to the destination, and subhanAllah, like, he didn't even look at her. But he didn't even look at her. Like, there was initial communication at the beginning because he recognized her from before the ayah of hijab. But soon as, you know, he was acquainted, okay, this is the wife of the Prophet, he put her on top of the ride, and they went to the destination. He didn't look at her, she didn't look at him. He didn't talk to her, she didn't talk to him, until they reached the destination.
Right.
And he would let her down, put the camel down, and he would leave before she even got down the animal. He would leave and go far away from her. And then when he would tell her to come back on it, he'd be far away. She'd get on it, then he would come. He wouldn't even be in the vicinity of her when she dismounted the animal on the way back, catching up with the caravan.
And then it's unlawful. Allah made it unlawful for the companions to marry the wives of the Prophet after he died. You know, out of honor to the Prophet ﷺ and honor to the wives of the Prophet. So,
and I'm even thinking about the story of Maryam when she came back and she was pregnant. Say, ya ukhta Harun, like, you know,
how could you do such a thing?
Right, you don't come from this. This isn't you, you know. So that's one thing about even preserving your sort of modesty and preserving your reputation prior to any inauspicious things happening. They say, wait a minute, this guy doesn't even come from that. That's not his character, right? So that character, reputation alone, it saves you, because people say, oh, that's not really, you know, he's not really about that, right? And alhamdulillah, that will probably perhaps curtail a lot of incidences from coming your way.
True.
Yeah, so just the reputation.
I've just recalled the story of a hadith. I remember a hadith about Prophet Muhammad, and he said a man would be stabbed in his head with a piece of iron rather than to touch a woman who is not lawful for him. I can't remember the note of hadith, the text of hadith. لأن يطعن مؤمن بمخيط من حديد في رأسه, in his head, خير له من أن يمس امرأة لا تحل له. You know, this is here, our Prophet Muhammad has emphasized the idea that you shouldn't have this mixture and this interaction. And if we have this interaction, it should be guided. But simply, if I have a daughter, I can't cut my daughter off other people because we don't live in the isolated world. I can say that we can live in this place, okay, this community or this society, but we need to have some kind of mihrim, some kind of guided interaction, you know, respectful place. We deal as colleagues, not as friends, because we don't have this concept in our Islam between friendship between man and woman, because this will bring lots of problems, you know. Eventually it can lead to some other problems like sexual diseases, as you see nowadays in Western societies, the rate of sexual diseases and chronic diseases, you know, as a matter of this problem.
I have a solution too, right?
Yeah.
I say that my recommendation would be to treat women, right, outside women that are not your mahram, how you would want someone to treat women in your family. And this is a really interesting story. I was on a tuk-tuk, right, riding a tuk-tuk with this guy, right, a tuk-tuk, right. You know, tuk-tuk drivers are always interesting, right? And he sees this lady, she's walking by, right, and he starts catcalling and, you know, whistling, oh, yeah, Mose, all this stuff, right? So I was like, yo, why would you do that? He was like, look at her, man, she's pretty. You don't see her, man, you don't see her, right? So I said, well, what if that was your mother? And he, my mom? No, not my mom. And he lost it, right? So I said, that's somebody's mother, though, perhaps. Or somebody's wife, or somebody's sister, right? So why somebody else's mother, but not your mother, right? What if I did that to your mother? And he lost, this is me mentioning his mom, he lost it, like his face turned red. So I was thinking, like, look at the double standard. You can treat other people. So we all had this idea of, I'm not going to treat other people the way I wouldn't want somebody to treat my family. You know, it would.
That's definitely a double standard that I would say exists more in like the Islamic world, shockingly. But you know, in the Prophet ﷺ, it was an incident just like that with the shab.
Yes, that's what I want to mention.
He came to the Prophet. He said, "Oh Prophet, Shabab, you know, in the prime of his youth, you know, he said, Prophet, just give me permission to do this act." But see the character of the Prophet and the understanding of the Prophet. He didn't just shun him right away or was like aggressive when he said. He took him close and, you know, talked to him in a very pleasant manner. He said, "What if? Would you be okay if someone did that to your mom?" Said, "No." If someone did it to your sister, your aunt, your wife, no, no, no. He said, "Okay." Likewise, people wouldn't want that to happen to their family. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he put his hand on his heart out of mercy, and he made dua for him. He said, "Allahumma ghfir dhanbah wa tahhir qalbah wa hassin farjah." Oh Allah, please forgive his sins, purify his heart, and help him be chaste in his life. And that's something else we can use, a dua to help us in these situations. And this companion, he said, after that, I didn't have any evil thoughts in my head.
SubhanAllah, let's look at this situation here, right? Can you imagine one of us going to our local sheikh, right? Yeah, sheikh, you know, I want to do this thing, right? Haram alaykum, this person will put a fatwa on you, will take you outside of Islam, right? But look at the relationship I'm thinking about that the companions have with the Prophet ﷺ, that they were comfortable enough to say, Rasulullah, I want to do this thing. Can you give me permission to do this? I don't know anybody I can talk, even my friends, like, you're bugging. Like,
just to add to this is sort of a little bit off the topic, but on the topic at the same time, is that I would advise parents, make your relationship with your children that they can come and ask you anything.
Right, and this is
don't make them afraid to come to you, because if you don't, they don't come to you, they're going to go to the streets.
And resort to bad friends.
Yes, and they resort to their friends, and then they're going to learn from them and be influenced by them.
And that's the point I'm making, that as Muslims, we need to have I don't want to say open mind, right, but we just need to be more welcoming and more empowering to people. If there's people in your life, right, and have more sincerity. If somebody, we have human problems, and somebody comes to you with this problem and say, listen, this is an issue I'm dealing with, make dua for them, advise them, you know, give them tarbiyah in a kind and gentle way, but don't push them outside of the door and lead them directly to it.
Exactly.
With that being said, inshallah ta'ala, it's been a wonderful episode, very enlightening, and we're always sad to have to end our show, but I want to thank our noble guests, Brother Hamid, Brother Mahmoud, Brother Patrick, and Dr. Idris, inshallah, for the wonderful insights. And until next time, we're going to leave you with this, inshallah ta'ala. Think about the relationships you have. If you know any people in these predicaments, advise them. Perhaps, you know, show them some different studies and things like that. And may Allah ta'ala make it easy upon all of us to be better Muslim men and women and be more modest and, you know, preserve these matters very closely. I'm your host, Yusuf Kroma. It's been a wonderful show. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Perfect my Allah is, and I praise Him. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah, how perfect you are, Allah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah. How perfect you are, Allah, Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, I'm calling your name, Allah. I call you, I need you, Allahu Akbar, Allah, your mercy is great.